Our story begins about 10,000 to 12,000 years ago in a region called the Fertile Crescent, modern-day Israel, and the surrounding countries. This is where humans were inventing agriculture, transitioning from nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled farmers, growing crops and storing grain. And here's where things get interesting. When humans started storing grain, they accidentally created an all-you-can-eat buffet for house mice. Mouse populations exploded around these early agricultural settlements. Suddenly, you had concentrated food sources attracting concentrated rodent populations. Enter the African wildcat, specifically Felis sylvestris, Libica, the ancestor of all domestic cats. These small, solitary hunters lived throughout North Africa and the Near East. They were perfectly adapted to hunt small rodents. And when they noticed that human settlements were absolutely crawling with mice, they made a calculated decision. This is where I want to be. The wildcats that were naturally less afraid of humans, the boldest, most curious ones, ventured closer to these settlements. They started hunting the mice that were eating human grain stores. And here's the key. Humans probably noticed this and thought, hey, these little cats are solving our rodent problem. Let's not chase them away. This is what scientists call commensal domestication, where an animal domesticates itself by exploiting an ecological niche created by humans. The cats weren't asking permission. They just moved in and started providing pest control services, whether we wanted them or not. Now, let's talk about the earliest archaeological evidence of the human-cat relationship, because this one is absolutely heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. In 2004, archaeologist Jean-Denis Vin and his team were excavating a Neolithic burial site on the Mediterranean island of Cyprus. What they found was extraordinary. In a grave dating back 9,500 years, they discovered an adult human of unknown gender buried alongside a young cat just 8 months old. The cat was deliberately placed just 40 centimeters away from the human, positioned carefully in the grave. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't the cat wandering in after the burial. This was an intentional burial of a human with their companion. And here's what makes this evidence so powerful. Cyprus is an island. There were no native wildcats on Cyprus. This means that humans must have intentionally brought cats to the island by boat, probably from the mainland of the Near East. You don't accidentally transport cats across open ocean. This was deliberate. Think about what this means. 9,500 years ago, people cared enough about cats to bring them on dangerous sea voyages and to bury them with their deceased loved ones. This isn't just tolerance of a useful pest controller, this is emotional attachment. This is companionship. This burial represents the earliest clear evidence of a special relationship between humans and cats, suggesting that domestication had already been underway for some time before this burial took place. Fast forward a few thousand years to ancient Egypt, and cats went from useful pest controllers to literal gods. By around 3,600 years ago, Egyptian artists were painting domesticated cats in tombs and on papyrus. These cats appear in scenes of daily life under chairs, wearing collars, sometimes even being offered food by their owners. These weren't wild animals. These were pets. Around 2,900 years ago, cats became an official deity in Egypt in the form of Bastet, the cat-headed goddess of home, fertility, and protection. The city of Bubastis became the center of Bastet worship, and what happened there is absolutely mind-blowing in scale. The Egyptians bred cats on an industrial level. We're talking about thousands, possibly millions of cats bred specifically for religious purposes. When these sacred cats died, they were mummified with the same care given to human royalty. Archaeological excavations have uncovered cat mummies by the ton, literally measured in tons of mummified cats. Some of these mummified cats wore golden jewelry, had decorated burial wrappings, and were placed in elaborate sarcophagi. The Egyptians weren't just tolerating cats. They were celebrating them, worshipping them, and breeding them in staggering numbers. Egypt even prohibited the export of cats for centuries, trying to maintain a monopoly on these valuable animals. But as we know from history, export bans rarely work. By 2,500 years ago, cats had made their way to Greece, likely smuggled by traders who recognized their value as both pest controllers and exotic commodities. By about 2,000 years ago, grain ships were sailing directly from Alexandria, Egypt, to ports throughout the Roman Empire. And where there are grain ships, there are rats. And where there are rats, you need cats. Cats almost certainly traveled aboard these ships as working animals, the ancient equivalent of ship's cats, keeping the cargo safe from rodents during long voyages. When the ships docked in Rome, Athens, Marseille, and other Mediterranean ports, cats disembarked and established populations in these new cities. As the Roman Empire expanded northward into Europe, cats went with them. Archaeological evidence shows cats appearing in Germanic regions between the 4th and 10th century centuries CE. Cat bones have been found at sites across Europe, and references to cats in art and literature increased steadily through the medieval period. By the Middle Ages, cats were common throughout Europe. Though they faced persecution during witch hunts in the 14th century, being associated with witchcraft and Satan, they remained essential for rodent control. In fact, when cat populations were decimated during the witch hunts, rat populations exploded, and those rats brought plague-carrying fleas with them. The Black Death that swept through Europe between 1346 and 1353 might have been made worse by the earlier killing of cats. Humans eventually learned their lesson. Cats weren't demonic. They were essential. By the Renaissance, cats were back in favor, and by the time ships were sailing to the Americas, cats were aboard, reportedly traveling with Columbus, the Jamestown settlers, and even the Mayflower. When we domesticated wolves into dogs, we transformed them completely. Dogs evolved smaller brains, floppy ears, curly tails, drastically different sizes and shapes, and most importantly, an innate ability to understand human communication. Dogs evolved to please humans because we actively selected for those traits over thousands of years. Cats. Cats stayed cats. Genetic studies show that modern domestic cats are nearly identical to their wild cat ancestors. Felis silvestris labique. They're slightly smaller and come in more color varieties, but their fundamental biology and behavior are unchanged. A domestic cat placed in the wild can survive and hunt just fine. Many do we call them feral cats, and there are millions of them worldwide. Cats remain solitary hunters at heart. They're crepuscular active at dawn and dusk. They're obligate carnivores, requiring high-protein diets. They retain their hunting instincts even when well-fed. They don't naturally seek human approval the way dogs do. The main change in cats through domestication is their tolerance of humans and other cats. Wild cats are solitary and aggressive toward each other outside of mating. Domestic cats, while still independent, can tolerate living in colonies and cohabiting with humans. That's about it. As one researcher beautifully put it, cats were perfect as they were. We didn't need to change them because they were already excellent at their job killing. Rodents and humans weren't trying to make them do anything else. For most of their history with humans over 10,000 years, cats existed as a single general type. Small, short-haired, tabby-patterned Mausers. The ancient Egyptians, despite breeding thousands of cats, didn't create distinct breeds. Their artwork shows cats that all look essentially the same. Mackerel tabby wildcats. The creation of fancy cat breeds is shockingly recent. Most modern cat breeds were developed in the British Isles in the 19th century. The first official cat show was held in 1871 at the Crystal Palace in London, where breeds like Persians and Siamese were displayed for the first time. Today, the Cat Fanciers Association and International Cat Association recognize about 60 breeds of domestic cats. All of these breeds were created through selective breeding within just the last 150 years. Compare that to dog breeds, many of which are ancient and have been distinct types for thousands of years. This is because, unlike dogs, cats weren't bred for specific jobs beyond mousing. We didn't need herding cats, guarding cats, or hunting cats. They all did the same thing: kill small animals. So there was no evolutionary pressure to create different types until modern humans decided they wanted cats with specific aesthetic features: flat faces, long hair, unusual colors, or lack of tails.